Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us in this new video of ours where we carry on talking about the stalemates, the impasses, the hindrances we can experience when we start thinking on well-being, psychological well-being and physical well-being, which has been our focus for the last few weeks. Now today we're going to talk about a very specific hindrance, a very specific obstacle, sometimes for us to be able to experience psychological well-being, the feeling of being part of something, the feeling of being in some degree of harmony with life and with the world, which is the misunderstanding. So today we're going to talk a bit about a misunderstanding. Now, when we're talking of a misunderstanding, I don't just mean, I thought you said this. What's the address? The address is Park Avenue. Oh, I understood Hyde Avenue. That's one thing. What we're talking about a misunderstanding is I say something and it is taken in a different direction than the originally intended to. So I'm trying to say something and it is getting to people in a different way. And one of them, it can be, misunderstanding is one of the most bewildering experiences we can have. Why is that so? That is so because it can put us in the wrong track very easily. I have the example here. As goes what I heard of a young man who, when he was a teenager, he had the girl he thought the most gorgeous, the most beautiful girl, the cutest girl in his class, came up to him and looked at him from top to bottom and said, "Look, you get this hair of yours cut, you cut your nails and you change your clothes, put something better on, and then you come and talk to me." He spent the rest of his adolescence understanding that she had said that you are not sufficient. I have no interest in you. First of all, change your whole being and then you come to me. It was only later on, as an adult in mature life, he suddenly realized that maybe what she meant was, "Look, I find you cute, I find you attractive, but I would rather you had your hair and your nails and your clothes set in a different way," which probably was what went on. That, needless to say, he got really angry with himself, having been so stupid and having let such an opportunity go by his life. But anyway, that's a misunderstanding. The girl was obviously telling him he was an interesting kid, but he understood, in her words, she was dismissing him as uninteresting. So that is the degree in which a misunderstanding can take place. Now, this is obviously a teenage story. This is something that happened in high school. Now, imagine what can come of misunderstandings that we have in our adult, daily, professional, romantic, family lives. How bad things can turn, how bad things can get. So it's really extremely treacherous, especially when it is amid an argument, when we are dealing with someone who is specially or a situation there is some upheaval at stake. Consequences can be grave. So it's very important we understand a little more what people are thinking, what people are telling us and saying to us, and what we are saying to people. That's even more important, to be able to acknowledge, bring to our own mind what we are saying and how that could be misinterpreted, misunderstood by someone else. Not easy. I would say misunderstandings are virtually unavoidable, but they are reducible. The frequency of them and the severity of them can be mitigated, can be quenched. The figure, the mythological figure, character who comes in here to teach us a bit about misunderstanding is Narcissus. Narcissus, especially after Freud, Narcissus was brought into existence as the image of someone who falls in love with himself, with herself, one in deep love with oneself. But that is somewhat off the track. There's some other understandings we can have of the character and his story, which can lead us to a more profitable result, which would be something that is hardly ever reminded, is that Narcissus is the portrayer of individuality. His story goes kind of like this. I've seen 3 or 4 versions of the myth, but it goes sort of like this. He was very good looking, he was very handsome, and apparently wealthy or powerful. I'm not sure to that, but anyway, he was someone who's extremely attractive from a romantic and, if you like, from an erotic point of view, and he was always receiving loving offers. Now, the situation starts to go bad when we realize he despises and he has disdain for these offers. And as you know, a love offer which is disdained has nothing to do with refused. So someone can fall in love with someone else and it's not corresponded, but this someone else does not need to despise whoever it is that doesn't correspond to their loving disposition. It's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. I am aware of a young man who feels extremely discomfortable when he realizes someone is coming on to him. He feels someone is getting close to him, someone is trying to become more intimate with him, and he realizes there is a romantic interest and it doesn't correspond. He feels bad about it. He really feels embarrassed, as if she or he is offering me something that I cannot correspond to. He feels insufficient. It's even the opposite. Now, disdain is when I think I am worthy of that love, but the person isn't sufficient to fulfill the love I am due. That's more or less the kind of attitude. That's the mistake with Narcissus, because after all, what could he do about the fact of being handsome or being in many ways attractive? That's all the drama of erotic romantic stuff. But we are going back to our existential transcending dimension and just to cut out the fact that sometimes erotic, loving, romantic involvements are often the most complicated we can have, exactly because of these things. This desire of correspondence, which is usually difficult, to say the least. But anyway, he called the attention of a nymph. Not only mortals, nymphs, goddesses, whatever, they all would eventually become romantically interested in him. One of them was Echo, a nymph called Echo. Yes, you understood it. Echo. Echo? When something is echoing on the walls of a place. Yes, sound echo. That's where the word, as far as I was able to check out, it's from where the word echo comes from, this nymph. Now realize that her name is Echo, something that goes and comes back. It's not for nothing that she was the one once disdained by him, as usual. She was disdained by him. and she decided to put on a plague, a punishment for him, which was he would fall in love with his own image. Now that's interesting because usually we talk about narcissistic experiences, but Narcissus himself was not a narcissist because he didn't fall in love with himself. He fell in love with the image he saw in the river, and it was a specific river. He sat on the sandbank and looked and became fixated, became obsessed by the image and not by himself. So what and that's the interesting thing, because who put on that plague on him was a nymph called Echo. That's very interesting. It's not oikos, which means house. It's echo. It has a different meaning. And that makes Narcissus the typification of misunderstanding. Narcissus is the typically misled human being. He lost himself. He lost himself, and he knew nothing about how he could solve his own apory. He took his image for an alter idem. He took his image for another me, one that was very much like me, my echo, my reflection. He fell in love with his reflection. He didn't fall in love with himself. It's very difficult to fall in love with yourself. How do you do that? We learn right from the crib, from the cradle. We learn that we fall in love with someone else. We believe that someone else is or has the solution for our emptiness or for our pain or for our sorrow. So, Narcissus has another secret about him. What happened when the plague was launched upon him? He lost his capacity of transcending. That's what happened. He became crippled from his capacity of transcending, of looking around out to something that does not make reference to my image of myself. What he lost was the capacity of transcending. He became an individual. He became someone who could not be divided. And that's what happens to us when we are taken. The mechanism, because this is not an evil mechanism. This is not necessarily noxious, but the consequences of this taken to an extreme might be extremely deleterious to our existence and to our psychological well-being. Because we attribute, in the structure of misunderstanding, we attribute to someone else that which we suppose could be an accusation or a compliment toward ourselves, an echo of our disposition about ourselves. So I see in someone else an accusation or a compliment or something which I have of myself. Let's go back to the gentleman who at high school received what could be a compliment and he took it as an insult. He read in that girl's words, in her demeanor, in whatever, he read an inferiority feeling he had toward her. He read it in her lips. She wasn't saying he was useless from a romantic point of view. She asked him to improve certain issues that were getting in her way. Fix your hair, cut your nails, whatever. She was actually offering a compliment, and he was actually reading an insult, because he saw in her lips the insult, the image of what he thought of himself. So that is what we call narcissistic. It's not necessarily flattering. It's not necessarily pretty. Narcissism can be hell in our lives. So, the key for understanding all this, which is the mechanism which allows us not to or to confound in a lesser degree our expectations in other people's faces. The fact that Narcissus disdained, he mocked, he despised the people who looked for him with interest, in a loving interest. He was in a quest of prestige. He really thought some people could be worthy of him and other people couldn't be worthy of him, of his attributes. He understood his good looks. He understood his attractive nature as something that made him worthy, because there is prestige in being good looking, there is prestige in being a demigod, there is prestige in being an illustrious, a famous, a distinguished person, someone distinguished in the mob, in the multitude. We've talked about this a few videos ago. Solitude in the multitude. That's a sociologic, anthropologic experience we have. We started having it in the 20th century. Now it seems to be a little bit mitigated with the social media, because it kind of gave us back a feeling of exclusivity, which gets lost when we're in a subway wagon going home. We are anonymous within a multitude. So the conclusion is, how can we bring that prestigious key for our understanding on the misunderstanding experience? We that practice mindfulness, or we that undergo psychotherapy, or those of us who in one way or another choose skillful means to deal with our difficulties, we use this practice and insight to divulge the ideas. What we can do is divulge, separate, distend, unstick our ideas of individuality with singularity, peculiarity. We've talked a lot about peculiarity, singularity as elements that are essential for our happiness. But this does not mean individuality. That's what happened to Narcissus. He became individual, undivisible, impossible to be separated innerly. And consequently, he became useless. Some versions say he committed suicide. Whatever. But what we have is our singularity, that which makes us peculiar, our story, our looks, whatever. And from a non-judgmental point of view, because, and needless to say, Narcissus was extremely judgmental. In a non-judgmental way, we go in the direction of things, our singularity, and our singularity, peculiarity, is actually shareable. It is divisible. That's the key to transcendence. That's exactly the dimension that Narcissus had seized from him. Our singularity is shareable. It is divisible. It is partakeable. It is the opposite of indivisible, unshareable, which is, in Portuguese we say indivíduo, for an individual. And it's almost homophonic. So let's think about that our individuality has nothing to do with our singularity. What we strive, what we look for, what we claim in our practice is singularity, what makes us peculiar. But peculiar has nothing to do with individual. Thank you very much. Hope this has been of help. Don't give up on yourself. We'll be seeing each other in the next video. Thank you very much for your presence today. Bye-bye.